I never thought I'd be the guy spilling his guts online, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I'm still pretty stunned about everything that's happened. My marriage with Lisa wasn't perfect, nothing is, right? But I never really thought it would come to this. We've been together for about 8 years, had our ups and downs, but I always believed in us. She's always been a bit bossy, a little bitchy sometimes, but I thought that was just her personality. I was content, or at least I thought I was. The first sign something was off started about 6 months ago. Lisa had been acting strange, more secretive, more irritated, snapping at me over small things, then brushing it off when I'd ask what's wrong. She'd say she was stressed at work, or tired from those long nights she claimed she was putting into her job at that boutique. I didn't buy all of it, but I figured maybe she was just overwhelmed or having a rough patch. I tried to give her space, to be patient, but it was hard not to notice her phone going off constantly. She'd always hide it, quick to slam it down if I got near. That alone was enough to raise a red flag, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then came the weirdest part. About 3 weeks ago, I was going through some of her things, nothing weird, just looking for a pair of sunglasses she'd been hiding in her purse, and I saw a receipt from a bookstore that I didn't recognize. It was for a book on editing, a pretty niche thing, but what caught my eye was the date. It was the same day she told me she was working late at the boutique. But that's not all. Hidden behind some receipts, I found a series of emails saved on her laptop. They were from someone named Alex, and the way she was talking to him, it wasn't just friendly, it was intimate. There were mentions of session, working late, editing, but in a way that sounded more like code for something else. I didn't understand at first. I thought maybe I was paranoid or reading too much into it, but the emails kept going. She'd send drafts of something, then ask him for feedback. The last message I saw was her thanking him for helping with the rewrite, and she signed off with a smiley face. I couldn't breathe. My stomach sank. I felt this cold pit open inside me, and I knew I'd caught her in something real. That's when the real gut punch hit. I remembered that editing session she'd supposedly had with her boss from work. It was always late at night, always after I'd gone to bed. She'd say she was just helping a friend out. But now I see that she was actually meeting up with this Alex guy, probably in the same coffee shop or hotel room where I'd never been invited. I felt sick, like I'd been punched in the chest. All those nights I thought she was at work, I was actually wondering what the hell she was doing with that bastard. I kept the evidence. I didn't confront her right away. I just sat there, staring at the laptop, feeling numb. How could she do this? After all these years, after everything we had. It was so sudden, just like a blow to the gut. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling at first. Anger, heartbreak, betrayal, probably all of it at once. I couldn't eat, could sleep. I kept thinking about how she'd lied so smoothly, how she'd convinced me she was working late when she was busy with her affair. It was like everything I knew about her, everything I believed in, was a lie. And then the question kept echoing in my mind. What do I do now? Do I confront her? Do I leave? I felt so overwhelmed I didn't even know where to start. I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep going like this. I needed to get my head straight, figure out what her intentions were, and decide if I was ready to fight for this or walk away. But the betrayal cut deep, and I knew my world was about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind kept circling around her, the emails, the receipts, everything I'd uncovered. I couldn't focus on work. My hands trembled just thinking about how she'd lied so effortlessly. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How could I have been so blind? I'd always thought Lisa was ambitious, maybe a little bitchy, but honest. At least that's what I believed. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it without a plan. I needed answers, but I also needed to be smart about it. I started digging through her phone, nothing invasive, just enough to see if she'd slipped up, and she did. That afternoon, I caught her texting someone named Alex. The message read, "Can't wait for tonight, I've missed you so much." My heart stopped. That was it. I knew for certain now. She'd been lying about everything. Those sessions weren't just work, they were sex, probably more than that. I should have felt rage, but instead I felt this cold, hollow disappointment. I'd loved her, believed in her, and she'd been screwing around with some guy in her editing sessions. The thought of her with him, close enough to share secrets and lies, made my stomach churn. It was like my entire world was crumbling, piece by piece. The worst part was how she reacted when I finally confronted her. I waited until she came home that evening, her bag over her shoulder and that smirk on her face. I was ready. My heart pounding, I pulled out the evidence, screenshots of the emails, the messages from her phone, the receipts. Her eyes widened for a second, then that bitchy smirk returned. "Oh, Mike," she said, rolling her eyes, "you're overreacting. It's just work. You're paranoid." I couldn't believe she was playing it off so casually. I got angrier. "Don't lie to me. I know what you've been doing. Those emails, the messages, you've been lying for months." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "God, you're so insecure. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. He's just a friend helping me edit my stupid novel. You think I'd cheat on you over a stupid book?" That's when I lost it. I told her I'd seen enough, that I knew about the affair, the sex, everything. She kept denying, lying, claiming it was all a mistake, that she loved me, that it meant nothing. But I saw her for what she was: a liar, a cheat, and a bitch who thought she could get away with it. I felt betrayed in a way I never had before. All those nights I stayed up, wondering where she was, what she was doing. Turns out she was with him, probably having sex, probably lying right to my face. The emotional fallout hit harder than I expected. I was furious, yes, but also incredibly hurt. How long had this been going on? Did she love him? Did she even love me? I couldn't grasp it. I'd always believed we had something real, even with all her bitchiness. And now it was all shattered. I told her she needed to leave. Just pack her things and get out of my house. She argued, yelled, called me insecure, jealous, and accused me of invading her privacy. She even cried, which made me feel sick, like I was the bad guy for catching her in a lie. But I didn't care. I knew I couldn't keep living in this lie. I told her if she stayed, I would never trust her again. That was the point of no return. That night was the worst. I sat alone in the living room, drinks in hand, trying to process everything. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and emptiness. I kept replaying her words, her lies, the way she dismissed everything as just work. But I knew better now. I knew she'd been lying to my face. For months, the betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again, especially a woman I thought I knew. I realized that some betrayals are so profound, they change you forever. And I had a long road ahead to pick up the pieces of my heart. The days that followed were a blur of emotion. I'd never felt so hollow, so lost. Every time I looked at her side of the bed, the empty space where she used to sleep was a reminder of everything I'd lost: trust, stability, the future I'd envisioned with her. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let her manipulate me with her bitchy, dismissive attitude and half-truths. It was like I was blind, and now I was paying the price. I tried to keep busy, but nothing really helped. I went to work, kept my head down, but my mind kept circling back to her, her lies, her betrayal. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this searing anger. When she finally moved out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. I knew I had to get away from her toxicity, but part of me still loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I wasn't sure what to feel. One day I decided I needed to confront her one more time, face to face, get some closure, or so I thought. She called me, trying to explain herself, crying and begging for me to understand. She said she was lost, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that the affair with Alex was a mistake. I listened, but honestly, I couldn't believe a word she said. How could she call what she did a mistake? She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd been lying to me for months, using her editing sessions as a cover for sex and betrayal. I told her it was over. No more excuses, no more lies. I told her I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and I didn't want to be with someone who thought so little of me, of our marriage. I told her I'd never trust her again, and that she'd burned every bridge. She begged me to forgive her, said she loved me, that she was sorry. But I couldn't hear it anymore. Honestly, I just wanted her gone. I needed to breathe again, to feel like I wasn't living in a constant state of betrayal. That's when I decided I had to do something drastic to regain some control. I knew she'd been spying on my reactions, trying to get back into my good graces. I also knew she'd be expecting me to chase her, to beg her to stay. But I refused. Instead, I started planning how to take back my life. I changed my passwords, blocked her on everything, and started seeing a lawyer just to understand my options. I wanted to make sure she couldn't manipulate me anymore, that I could reclaim some sense of stability. The emotional toll was enormous. I felt anger bubbling under the surface, anger at her for her lies, for her betrayal, for making me doubt everything I thought I knew. I also felt a strange sense of relief, knowing I was finally taking control again. But mostly, I just felt numb, like I was walking through fog, unsure of my next move, unsure of who I was anymore. The woman I loved, the wife I trusted, she was gone. All that was left was this hollow shell and a burning question: how? Do you even begin to rebuild after something like this? How do you forgive and move on when the person you trusted the most in the world turned out to be your greatest enemy? After I made up my mind and started executing my plan, everything felt like a whirlwind. I moved out of our shared apartment, took only what I truly needed, and changed all my passwords, every account, every email, every social media profile. I didn't want her to have any access to my life anymore. The betrayal had cut so deep that I was determined to cut ties completely. It was a brutal decision, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house, surrounded by her lies and her betrayal. I needed space to breathe, to think, to heal. In the days that followed, I began to see a lawyer. I wanted to understand what rights I had, what my options were, and how I could protect myself legally. I wasn't planning to rush into anything, at least not yet, but I knew I had to prepare. I also started seeing a therapist. I'd never really opened up about my feelings before, but bottling everything up was slowly destroying me. The therapist helped me process the shock, the anger, and the heartbreak, even if I still felt like I was just going through the motions. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to reach me, texts, voicemails, even a few tearful calls where she claimed she was sorry and needed me to understand. Honestly, I was too numb to respond. I didn't trust her anymore, not even a little. Everything she said sounded hollow, like she was just trying to manipulate her way back into my life. I'd seen her true colors and I couldn't forget them. Her bitchy attitude, her constant lying. She had become a stranger, and I was starting to realize I didn't know who she really was. One day, I found myself remembering all the moments I'd ignored, all the times I'd brushed off her bitchy comments or her mood swings. I started questioning everything about our marriage, everything I'd once believed in. Was I really happy, or was I just afraid of being alone? I kept telling myself I deserved better than someone who'd cheat, lie, and manipulate me. But it still hurt. Deep down, it really hurt. That betrayal had shattered my sense of trust, and I wondered if I could ever repair it or if I even wanted to. As the days went on, I made a decision. I wouldn't chase her. I wouldn't beg for her to come back. Instead, I would focus on myself. I started working out again, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and slowly rebuilding my sense of independence. The process wasn't easy. I'd wake up some mornings feeling empty, some nights crying alone, but I knew I was moving forward, no matter how slowly. I kept telling myself that I was better off without someone who didn't value me enough to be honest. The most intense moment came when she finally showed up at my new place, knocking on my door after a week of silence. I didn't want to see her, but I also felt that strange pull, like I needed closure. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, eyes puffy, her bitchy attitude replaced with a desperate expression, I realized how much her betrayal had affected me. I looked her straight in the eye and told her she could go. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses or her lies anymore. I had already made my decision. I was done. Done with her lies, her games, her manipulations. Whatever love I had left was now replaced with a cold resolve. I told her I was moving on and I didn't want her to come back into my life. That moment marked a turning point. I knew I'd never forget what she did, but I also knew I had to let go of the pain and start rebuilding. Sometimes, betrayal leaves scars, deep ones, but I also realized that I had the power to heal. It was about choosing myself, refusing to be a victim of her lies anymore, and learning how to trust again, eventually. The road to recovery was just beginning, but I was determined to walk it. The weeks after her last visit were the hardest, but also the most necessary. I forced myself to keep going, to pick up the pieces of my life that she had shattered. Every day was a struggle, waking up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, fighting off that persistent feeling of betrayal and the weight of everything I lost. But I also started to see small signs of recovery. I found myself laughing again, even if it was rare and tentative. I reconnected with friends, people who knew me before her, and who reminded me of who I was outside of this nightmare. At some point, I realized I was angry not just at her but at myself for trusting her so blindly, for ignoring the signs that were right in front of me. I kept replaying moments, wondering why I didn't see it coming. But mostly I was angry that she had taken so much from me. My peace, my trust, my sense of security. I'd been a fool, thinking I was enough for her. Now I knew better. One day I decided to confront the truth head-on. I sat down and wrote out everything I'd uncovered, every lie, every betrayal, every moment I felt manipulated and used. It was my way of reclaiming some control, of finally putting everything into perspective. I told myself I'd never let someone treat me like that again. No more excuses, no more justifications, just raw honesty with myself about what happened. That process helped me understand what I wanted moving forward. I didn't want her back, I knew that now. Even if she came crawling, apologizing, promising change, I couldn't trust her again. I'd been too broken, too betrayed. I started thinking about my future, about rebuilding my life without her. I didn't want to be bitter, but I also refused to be naive again. The experience taught me that some betrayals are so profound, they change everything. Slowly, I began to feel more like myself. I threw myself into work, into hobbies I'd neglected, and into the idea of starting over. I realized I deserved someone who valued honesty, who wouldn't lie and cheat behind my back. The pain was still there, lurking beneath the surface, but I was learning how to live with it. I was learning how to forgive myself for trusting her and how to forgive her for what she did. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed to move on. One night I was out with some friends, having a few drinks, and I suddenly felt a strange sense of peace. I looked around at the people I cared about, and I realized I was finally beginning to feel free. Free from her lies, her bitchy attitude, her betrayal. I still had scars, but they made me stronger. It was then I understood that sometimes betrayal can be a catalyst for growth. It's a painful process, but it can teach you what truly matters: trust, honesty, and respect. And I was finally starting to learn those lessons. I knew I'd be okay, even if it took some time to heal completely. Because in the end, I was learning to be my own person again. Looking back now, I realize that this whole mess changed me in ways I never expected. I won't pretend I'm completely healed or that I've completely moved on, but I am better. I've learned the hard way that trusting someone blindly isn't always safe, and that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, even from people you thought loved you. It's a brutal lesson, but one that I needed to learn. The thing is, I don't hate her. Well, maybe I did for a while, but now I mostly feel a deep sense of disappointment. Not just in her, but in myself for letting it go on so long. I thought I knew her, thought I had a partner I could count on. Turns out, she was just a stranger hiding behind a bitchy attitude and pretty lies. That realization stings, but it also sets me free. I understand that I can't control her choices or her actions, but I can control how I respond to them. I've come to accept that some betrayals leave scars that don't entirely fade, but they do become a part of who you are. I'll carry the pain, sure, but I also carry the lessons. I've learned how to recognize red flags sooner, how to stand up for myself, and most importantly, how to value my own happiness above everything else. Because if I don't, I risk losing myself entirely in someone else's lies. Now I focus on building a new future, one where honesty, respect, and trust are the foundations. I don't need her or anyone like her in my life to feel whole. I'm learning to be alone, not lonely. And honestly, that's the most freeing feeling of all. So, to anyone out there going through something similar, trust me, it hurts like hell. But it does get better. You'll find strength you didn't know you had. You'll learn who truly deserves your loyalty and love. And most of all, you'll discover that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and start over. Because life's too short to waste on people who don't see your worth. That's what I've finally realized, and it's a lesson I'll carry with me forever.